They thought she was nothing. They were very wrong. The dining room shimmered with a curated kind of perfection. Polished silverware aligned like soldiers, crystal glasses catching the soft glow of candlelight, the faint hum of classical music playing just loud enough to fill the silence without inviting attention. Everything in the Carter household had always been like this, controlled, elegant, and carefully constructed. Appearances mattered, truths less so. I stood at the threshold, my coat still draped over my arm, watching the scene unfold as though I were an outsider looking in. My mother, Elaine Carter, presided at the head of the table like a queen holding court. Her posture was flawless, her expression composed, her presence commanding without ever needing to raise her voice. Across from her sat Rachel, my sister, golden-haired, effortlessly poised, her laughter rising easily into the air as she recounted some story about a charity gala she had attended the week before. "And the mayor actually asked for my opinion," Rachel said, smiling as she lifted her glass. "Can you imagine?" "I can," Mom replied smoothly. "You've always had a way of making an impression." Of course she had. Rachel had always been the one worth noticing. And me? I stepped into the room quietly, closing the door behind me. "Sorry I'm late," I said. 3 pairs of eyes turned toward me. Rachel's expression flickered, something between surprise and mild irritation, before settling into polite indifference. Mom's gaze sharpened. "You're not late," she said coolly. "You're inconsiderate." I swallowed the familiar response that rose in my throat. "Work ran long." Rachel let out a soft laugh. "Still doing that little consulting thing?" Little. The word lingered in the air, heavier than it should have been. I gave a small smile. "Something like that." Dad glanced up briefly from his seat but said nothing, as usual. Silence had always been his safest position. I took my seat, the empty one at the far end of the table, the place that seemed permanently reserved for me, just distant enough to reinforce what had never needed to be said aloud. Dinner unfolded with practiced precision. Rachel spoke. Mom affirmed. Dad nodded. And I listened. It had always been this way, our family dynamic as predictable as the seasons. Rachel's achievements were discussed in detail, celebrated, admired. My life, on the other hand, existed in vague, dismissive summaries. "So," Mom said at one point, dabbing her lips delicately with her napkin, "have you thought about settling into something more stable?" I looked up. "I am stable." She tilted her head slightly. "Freelance work is not stability." "I run a firm," I replied. Rachel raised an eyebrow. "A firm? That's ambitious." There it was again, that tone. Polite disbelief. "It's doing well," I said simply. "How well could it possibly be?" Rachel asked, not unkindly but not kindly either. "You've never mentioned anything significant." "Because you never asked," I thought. But I didn't say it. Instead, I reached for the breadbasket. And that's when everything shattered. My shoulder brushed lightly against Rachel's as she leaned back, barely a touch, more accidental than intentional. But she reacted as if I had struck her. "What is wrong with you?" she snapped. The room froze. What?" I blinked. "You just shoved me," she said sharply, her voice rising. "I didn't shove you," I replied, trying to keep my tone even. "It was an accident." "An accident?" she repeated, incredulous. "You're always like this, careless, oblivious." I said I'm sorry if... The slap came without warning, loud, sharp, final. The sound echoed against the walls, silencing everything. My head turned with the force of it, my cheek burning instantly. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. "Are you blind or just stupid?" Rachel shouted. The words landed harder than the slap. I slowly turned back to face her, my vision blurring at the edges. "I didn't do anything," I said quietly. Mom's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "That's enough." Relief flickered, brief, fragile. But then she looked at me. "You need to apologize." The world seemed to tilt. "I didn't do anything," I repeated, my voice trembling now. "You upset your sister," Mom said firmly. "You disrupted dinner." She hit me. "And yet you're still arguing," she replied coldly. "Say you're sorry or leave." I stared at her, at Rachel, at my father who remained silent, eyes fixed on the table as if none of this concerned him. "Dad?" I said softly. For a moment, he didn't move. Then, slowly, he stood. Hope stirred. But instead of speaking, he walked to the front door and opened it. The cold night air rushed in, an unspoken command. Leave. Something inside me, something that had been quietly enduring for years, finally broke. Not loudly, not violently, but completely. I pushed my chair back and stood. No tears, no arguments, no apologies. I walked past them all, my footsteps steady, despite the storm raging inside me. And I left. The cold air outside felt like clarity. Each step away from the house peeled something back. Years of expectation, comparison, quiet dismissal. By the time I reached the end of the street, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I wasn't going back. Not as the version of myself they had always seen. Morning came slowly. At exactly 8 a.m., the Carter household stirred. Mom entered the kitchen first, already dressed, already composed. Rachel followed shortly after, her expression tight, restless. Dad lingered near the doorway, his gaze distant. No one spoke about the night before, not at first. Then the doorbell rang, sharp, unexpected. Mom frowned. Who could that be this early? Dad moved to answer it. When he opened the door, a man in a tailored suit stood on the porch, holding a leather portfolio. "Good morning," the man said. "I'm looking for Miss Carter." "You're speaking to one," Mom replied, stepping forward. The man glanced down at his notes, then back up. Alexandra Carter. The name hung in the air. Rachel let out a small laugh. "You must have the wrong address." "I don't believe I do," the man said calmly. "This is her registered residence." Registered. Mom's expression shifted slightly. "She doesn't live here," she said. "She's listed as the owner of this property." Silence. Heavy. Impossible. "That's ridiculous," Rachel said. "Our parents own this house." The man opened his portfolio, retrieving a document. "Not anymore," he said. "The property was transferred last year." Dad stepped forward, his brow furrowed. "Transferred? To who?" The man met his gaze. "To Alexandra Carter." The room seemed to collapse inward. "That's not possible," Mom said, her voice tightening. "There must be some mistake." "There's no mistake," the man replied evenly. "Additionally, I'm here regarding a scheduled acquisition meeting. Miss Carter is expected at 9:30. "Acquisition?" Rachel echoed. "Yes," he said, "regarding Carter and Hale Enterprises." Dad's face drained of color. "That's my company," he said. "Formerly," the man corrected. The words struck like lightning. "Your daughter finalized the majority acquisition 6 months ago. Today is the formal transition." The silence that followed was deafening. Rachel stared at him, then at her parents, then back again. "You're saying she owns the company?" she whispered. "Yes." "And this house?" "Yes." "And you're here because she requested that all family members be informed in person." The door creaked slightly as the wind pushed against it, and then footsteps, calm, measured, familiar. They all turned. I stood at the edge of the driveway, dressed in a tailored coat, my posture straight, my expression composed in a way they had never seen before. Not defensive, not uncertain, certain, completely. "Good morning," I said. No one spoke. Rachel's mouth parted slightly, her eyes wide with disbelief. Mom looked as though she had forgotten how to breathe. Dad simply stared. You're Serious? He asked finally. I stepped forward. I tried to tell you, I said quietly, but you never really listened. Rachel shook her head. This isn't real. It is, I replied. The man in the suit nodded respectfully. Miss Carter, your car is waiting. I glanced back at him briefly, then returned my attention to my family. For years, I continued, my voice steady, you decided who I was without ever asking. You reduced everything I built to something small because it made you more comfortable. No one interrupted. No one could. I didn't correct you, I admitted. Not because I couldn't, but because I wanted to see if you would ever see me without needing proof. I paused. But last night made something clear. I looked directly at Rachel. You never intended to. Her eyes filled with something. Regret, maybe, or realization. Too late. I turned to my mother. You taught me that appearances matter, that success is everything. A faint, bitter smile touched my lips. I just learned how to succeed without needing your approval. Finally, I looked at my father. You had every chance to stand up for me. His silence said enough. So now, I finished, I'm standing on my own. The wind shifted, carrying the crisp bite of morning with it. This house is yours, for now, I added. Consider it a grace period. Mom blinked. You would throw us out? I held her gaze. No, I said calmly, but I won't keep pretending this is home. Rachel took a step forward. Alex, wait. I paused. For a moment, something flickered. History, memory, what could have been. But then it passed. I hope you figure things out, I said. And this time, when I turned away, I didn't feel like I was leaving. I felt like I was finally moving forward. At 9:30 a.m., in a glass-walled boardroom overlooking the city, I took my seat at the head of the table. Executives straightened. Lawyers prepared their documents. And as the meeting began, one thought settled quietly in my mind. They had underestimated me. And now, they would never forget it. This is the end. Please subscribe if you like this story.
Select now another video in our series of family and company dramas. They are all powerful stories of people coming back stronger after they have been humiliated or hurt by family members or their management. Always make sure you stay strong. Let nobody ever tell you what you are worth. You know the best. Of course.